Maryland men's lacrosse survived a thriller in Baltimore. Men's basketball found its groove again against Rutgers, while women's basketball took care of business on the West Coast. We'll take a look at all of that and more coming up on this edition of The Left Bench.
I don't think it matters who's playing or who's watching. He's just that good of a player.
She was rewarded enough. We were all super proud of her.
Welcome back to The Left Bench, presented by Terrapin Sports Central. I'm Jonas Evans here with Nathan Schwartz. Nate, we've got a lot to get into today, but why don't we start with that impressive win on Sunday for Maryland men's basketball?
Yeah, Jonas, Rutgers was in town for Super Bowl Sunday, and this one was a lot closer than the Eagles-Chiefs game.
What a disappointing game, right?
Awful game.
Not this one. Well, the Xfinity Center was filled with fans and NBA scouts on Sunday. Almost 50 scouts from over 20 NBA teams were in attendance to watch the three best freshmen in the country. But when it came down to it, Derek Queen took over, giving Maryland its 8th Big Ten win of the year over Rutgers. It's the Scarlet Knights freshman duo that gets us started, Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper with the early buckets. Selton Miguel starts the scoring off for the Terps and goes 5 of 8 from 3, and then it's Derek Queen's turn. The Maryland freshman is firing on all cylinders. He scores a career-high 29 points to go along with 15 boards. Scarlet Knights were without Bailey for much of the second half as the Terps comfortably take care of business 90-81. Here's head coach Kevin Willard on his star freshman.
They all look like they had little baby faces out there. And it's the first time I've seen that in a long time, because it's been probably before COVID and the extra senior year that you see a bunch of freshmen on the court. I've seen that all year, so I mean, I don't think that's the first time. His first game he played in college, I think he had 22 and 20. So I don't think it matters who's playing or who's watching. He's just that good of a player.
And now to help us break down that huge win on Sunday and project Maryland's success down the line, we're glad to welcome on TSC's men's basketball beat writers, Andrew Breza and Cooper Fojas. Thanks for coming, fellas.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks so much. Well, let's get into it. I mentioned earlier 29 points, the most for Derek Queen in a Terps uniform. What went right on Sunday to just take over that game, especially in the second half?
Well, I think he plays in front of the scouts very well. I think we've seen that. He said after the game that this game against his former friends, Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper, has been circled on his calendar for a long time. So we know he's got that competitive fire in him. I think when the lights are brightest is just when he goes off.
Yeah, and you know, the big story coming into this one was that really tough loss on Thursday night at Ohio State. That big collapse, they blow the 17-point lead. They come back, though, and in a similar situation, it was the opposite result this time. They were able to stay through into that second half. What do you think was the difference from not making sure that collapse happened again?
Well, I think that, you know, in year 3 of Kevin Willard, we've seen that he has struggled on the road. It's been a common theme, and it wasn't necessarily, you know, terrible play for Maryland. It certainly wasn't the best, but they did play pretty good defense down the stretch. Bruce Thornton of Ohio State just really took over. He hit a lot of those really tough shots, and that's one thing that Willard has said in a lot of his post-game press conferences is that he's pretty impressed with how the defense is played. They rank top 20 in defensive efficiency in the country. It's just kind of closing out those big moments. If they're able to just kind of keep a guy on the perimeter at all times to stop their number one shooter, we know what Derek Queen and Juju Reese can do getting those boards inside. I think that's going to be the key for them down the stretch.
And I think it was huge that Maryland was able to win that game without Juju Reese for a better part of the game, got into foul trouble early. But I want to talk a little bit about Selton Miguel because he had 4 threes the other day, one of them from the Gary Williams logo on the far side of the court. I mean, he has just been lights out from 3 as of late.
Yeah, I think Kevin Willard said he pretty much has the green light whenever he wants. He's this microwave ability. I mean, you could even say Roddy Rice the same way. When this team's struggling, maybe it's Queen struggling, Gillespie having a hard time getting going, you can always rely on a guy like Selton Miguel because he's never afraid to shoot the ball. And once he gets 1 in, once he gets 2 in, he catches fire so quickly, and it really pulls a team out of a hole when they need it.
And Andrew, you mentioned the defense. What I'm curious about, that 81 points that Rutgers put up was the most the Terps have allowed at home Now as they enter this super important stretch, is there anything about the defense that you still think needs to be changed, either one of you? Anything that's kind of still standing out as maybe a little bit of a weakness that needs to be solved?
Not necessarily on defense. I think more so it's the offensive efficiency. Once again, they rank pretty well. I believe it's top 20, top 25 as well. One thing that Willard has made an emphasis in his press conferences as well is taking good shots. He said that he dove more into the analytics this offseason, and although he admits he still has a lot of progress to make on that front, they've been tracking a lot of their possessions, and he doesn't really care if they take a shot and miss. He wants them to take a shot if they have it. He doesn't want them to hold on to it and try and look for the best opportunity every single time. He wants them to take the opportunity that they're given. And I think that sometimes that can hurt them. They try and move the ball around a little bit too much, and if they try and do that against these higher quality opponents, especially on the road like Nebraska this upcoming week, that place is going to be loud. They're going to be a little bit rattled. So they have to take what they're given, and if they do that, then they should be able to put the ball in the basket. And on defense, they should be able to close out.
I mean, we know how hard it is to win on the road in college basketball. Cooper, Andrew, thanks so much. Thanks so much for joining us.
Actually, one more.
Oh, one more?
One more before they leave. So I just want to get your guys' opinion on how far this team could go in March, let alone the Big Ten tournament, but also, if they get to the NCAA tournament, looking pretty good at this point, how far they could go there.
I think this is a Sweet 16 team. And to be honest, if this team is one of the last 8 remaining, I wouldn't be surprised either. But I think we talked about defensive efficiency, which you need to have to do well in March, which we've seen for the past however many years now. I think a Kevin Willard team is built for the early rounds of March Madness. I think once those games start getting tougher is when we might see those cracks start to show, like we've seen in a few of these road games in the Big Ten. I think Sweet 16 for sure.
I jumped the gun on you, Nate. I'm sorry.
Yeah, come on, man.
Now, thank you so much for joining us. It's going to be a really exciting stretch here. I guess one last question for both of you before we leave. What's a seed prediction, do you think, for this team? What do you think realistically we're going to see for them?
There's still a lot of season left. Obviously, they're going to have to really work hard this next stretch. They have more road games left than home games, so that's going to make it a little tough. I think right now some experts are predicting them to be a 7 seed. If they can get it done on the road, I think we could potentially see a 6 seed. And like you said, I mean, this is a Maryland team I think that's been a little bit different this year than in years past. I think you have a little bit more confidence in them. It's just about kind of hammering down on those points and not getting too comfortable. I think they could be a 6 or a 7 seed, and they could pull an upset or two. It's just maintaining their team philosophy. That's one thing that Willard has been big on that he said. Like Cooper said a few minutes ago, this is a team that you shouldn't be surprised to see them in the Final 8. But we know that they can struggle when the lights are bright.
Absolutely.
So top 16 seems like a pretty reasonable prediction.
All right, well, if you want to check out any of their coverage, you can find that online at TerrapinSportsCentral.com and follow them on X. Andrew is at Breza Sports, and Cooper is at FOJ_123. Like we said, a Foj bomb, not a Woj bomb.
And now over to Baltimore, where Maryland men's lacrosse took on Loyola, looking to build off its strong start to the season. But that was far from the case. Through the first 3 quarters, Loyola is in full control, scoring 4 in the second and another in the third. Down 3 going into the fourth, the Hardshells are in desperation mode, but here comes Eric Spanos. The veteran adds 3 more to his total as Maryland goes on a 4-goal run, Terps up 6-5. Now 7-6 Maryland with just a few seconds left in regulation, and Loyola's Keenan Everhart does it himself. He skips one past Logan McNaney, which means we're headed to overtime. The extra period didn't last long though, as Matthew Keegan zips one past Loyola's Max Watkinson, sealing the 8-7 Terps win.
All right, well, we've still got plenty of Maryland athletics to catch up on, including a legendary milestone for one of College Park's legendary coaches.
That's right, we've got women's basketball, wrestling, and more coming up right after this short break. Stay with us.
Julie was always a voracious reader. She'd carry 2 novels on an airplane because she'd read one on a 3-4 hour ride. And at some point, I began to notice that she would read a page and couldn't remember what she had just read, and she'd have to go back and read it again.
I don't remember much these days after I read, but less does for me, and I love it.
Welcome back. I'm Jonas Evans. He's Nathan Schwartz, and this is the Left Bench presented by Terrapin Sports Central. Nate, what a historical moment for Maryland women's basketball this weekend.
Absolutely, Jonas. It was very fun to watch. The Terps started their West Coast trip with a stomping of Oregon, which was Brenda Frese's 600th win as Maryland's head coach. That's quite the accomplishment, but the road trip wasn't done yet, as Maryland took a quick flight up to Seattle to take on Washington. Right off the bat, Washington shoots lights out from 3 and jumps out to a 15-point lead. But then, Kayleen Smikle takes over. Smikle goes 13 of 18 from the field, earns her 23rd straight game in double figures, and finishes the day with 36 points, shattering her previous career high. The Terps go up by 14 after the third and are able to hold on, finishing off the road sweep with an 81-73 win over the Huskies. And like I said earlier, with last week's win over Oregon, Brenda Frese has surpassed 600 career wins with Maryland.
DSC's Christian Andriolis joins us in Studio B to break down Frese's historic career at Maryland. Christian?
600 wins in college athletics is a huge milestone for a program, but for a single coach, that is legendary. She has led the Terps to 19 NCAA tournament appearances in 22 seasons, highlighted by the 2006 National Championship over Duke. But now in 2025, with Maryland in the Big Ten, Frese has earned 601 career wins at the program, the most in program's history. But how does her legacy stack up against other coaches in her sport? Frese's 657 career wins rank 28th among active collegiate women's basketball coaches, but Frese is 6th among active coaches in Division I. Leading the pack are some of the biggest names in women's basketball history. Gino Auriemma with 1,236, Bill Fenley with 794, Joe McEwen with 776, Kim Mulkey with 748, and Stephanie Gately with 717. Among active head coaches, Frese is one of just 4 to win a national championship. She trails only Gino Auriemma's all-time record of 11 at UConn, Kim Mulkey with 4 between Baylor and LSU, and Dawn Staley with 3 at South Carolina. Now let's compare Frese to other great head coaches in Maryland history. Staying on the hardwood, 2 men's basketball coaches spent 15-plus years coaching at the school. Lefty Drizel spent 17 seasons coaching the Terps, leading them to 348 wins and 6 ACC championships. Gary Williams spent 22 seasons coaching at Maryland, winning 442 games, including the 2002 national championship. Aside from basketball, field hockey head coach Missy Maharg has won 655 games and 7 national championships. Under Brenda Frese, Maryland women's basketball has soared to new heights, producing over a dozen WNBA draft picks like Crystal Langhorne and Alyssa Thomas. Frese has cemented herself as one of the greatest coaches at UMD, but has a case for one of the best coaches in the country. Back to you guys.
Christian, I think this last stretch for Frese could be the most impressive because we've seen legendary coaches that haven't really been able to deal with this NIL era. But if you look at Maryland women's basketball and kind of this new era that they're in and her ability to still get wins, it's really impressive. It speaks to how great of a coach she is.
Yeah, absolutely. Despite, everybody going back and forth in and out of this program, there's been a level of consistency, and this team has the ability to make the run to the Elite Eight, maybe even the Final Four this year without Bree McDaniel, and that just tells you how much depth this team has.
And what an active race we have between Missy Maharg and Brenda Frese, just tallying up the wins. It's impressive. Well, Maryland Gymnastics returned back to the Xfinity Center for a head-to-head matchup with number 22 Penn State. Looking for their second straight Big Ten win, the Terps fell just short. In the second rotation on the uneven bars, Haley Merchant leads the Terps, tying a career-high 9.875. The highlight of the night for the Terps comes on the beam with Madeline Komorowski's impressive score of 9.9 in the event, good for the highest score of the night. Even with the high score, the Terps trailed Penn State by .45, and heading into the final rotation, Maryland could not make up the difference, falling to the Nittany Lions 195.55 to 195.225. Here's head coach Brett Nelligan with more on Komorowski's 9.9 beam.
When Maddie is in the zone on beam, she's a work of art. And I know she's been frustrated this year with a few routines in the past, haven't been exactly the way she knows she's capable of doing it. But today she put it all together, and she was rewarded, and we were all super proud of her.
Alex Clemson and Maryland Wrestling suffered a gut-wrenching loss at the Pavilion to Rutgers on Friday and looked to rebound on Sunday in Happy Valley. The top-ranked Nittany Lions didn't let that happen, though. Luke Lillydahl starts off the duel with a tech fall for Penn State, which sets the tone for the rest of the afternoon. Maryland is able to rattle off wins at 133 and 157, but the Nittany Lions continue their undefeated campaign, taking down the Terps 35-10.
Maryland tennis hosted a doubleheader on Saturday, taking on Howard and Morgan State back-to-back. Terps took care of business against both teams. First, a 7-0 sweep of Howard, highlighted by Callista Liu's straight-set win at one singles. Senior is now up to 96th in the country. Then Morgan State later in the day, and the Terps keep that winning momentum. This one finishes with another sweep, this time 4-0, including another straight-set win for Liu.
Maryland softball began its 2025 season out in Arizona with the Kajikawa Classic, and Lauren Karn couldn't have asked for a better start to her second year as head coach. It's always good when your first win comes against a ranked team, as Maryland upsets number 21 Cal in Game 2 of the weekend by a score of 6-3. And then in Games 3 and 5 of the tournament, the Terps take care of business, beating Miami of Ohio 6-4 and Utah 7-5. Now stay with us, because when we come back, we'll introduce a new game called Thumbs Up, Thumbs Down.
And as usual, give out our Pro Terp of the Week, Pro Terp, and Top 5 Plays.
Julie was always a voracious reader. She'd carry 2 novels on an airplane because she'd read one on a 3-4 hour ride. And at some point, I began to notice that she would read a page and couldn't remember what she had just read, and she'd have to go back and read it again.
I don't remember much these days after I read, but less does for me, and I love it.
Welcome back to The Left Bench, presented by Terrapin Sports Central. Familiar 3 right here, Nathan Schwartz, Jonas Evans, and Brandon Schwartzberg, of course, is back with us for another game.
And of course we have a new one, because we always have a new one. Here's what we're going to do this time. Our producers have provided us with some controversial or not so controversial statements on these pieces of paper right here. We're going to flip them over, read it out loud, and then hold up a thumb if we agree or thumbs down if we disagree. From there, we'll debate, and it's up to you guys at home to see who wins. Are we ready? Are you ready, Brandon?
I was born ready.
Okay.
He's born ready. All right, here we go with number
I'm nervous.
1. All right, here we go. Derek Queen is mocked as a first-rounder in the 2025 NBA draft. Although he recorded a career-high 29 points against Rutgers, his defense is worrisome, and his game may not translate to the next level. Thumbs up or thumbs down, Derek Queen is not ready for the NBA. So thumbs up would mean he is not ready. Thumbs down means he is ready.
Oh, this is interesting. Here's why this is interesting, because I think, I'm not giving my answer yet, but I think that what we gauge as NBA ready versus what most players that enter the draft, like, I think there's a lot of premature draft entries, so I don't...
That's kind of where I'm going with my thing a little bit. I mean, I'm going to, based on what that, I'm going to go thumbs down.
Yeah, I think
thumbs down as well. I think that's...
But,
yeah.
So my reasoning is, I think the NBA, the way the NBA drafts, it's based on potential, it's based on traits, and to get a big man who can pass like Derek Queen had, I'm sure you both saw that full court pass. He had to Juju Reese in that game. And so I think he's got the passing down for a big man. He's got a jump shot occasionally. I think he's still working on that, obviously, but he's shown the potential. I mean, a 27, 15, and 5 game is nothing to sneeze at. I mean, I think he's got incredible potential, and I think that's why he's going to be a first-round pick, and I think he'd be wrong to not enter the draft.
Effort-wise, on the defensive end, I think that's kind of where a lot of the question marks are. You say the jump shot, too. I'm sure that could get solved, because he definitely has good form. And I think, like, the Rutgers game is a good example. Like, when he really wants to turn it on, he seems to do so. If there's a motivation question, maybe that is still something that needs to be fixed. But for me, like you said, the intangibles, the traits, like, he has a lot of what it takes to be a really good player.
Yeah, I'm going to go thumbs down here. I'm going thumbs down. The motor, I think, is the big thing that everybody was worrying about, like we've already talked about a little bit. Like you said, when he wants to turn it on, he can turn it on. Of course, he always does turn it on. Sometimes he's been taken out due to foul trouble and other things. But when you're scoring 30 points at the collegiate level, and I believe that was his 8th 20-point game the other day against Rutgers in a single season. Maryland hasn't seen that since Melo Trimble, and that was a point guard that was here for multiple years. So I think Derek Queen is ready to make that jump to the NBA.
I think that, if anything, and we'll move to this in a sec, but I think he's not going to be a role player, though. Like, he needs to figure out what he needs to figure out, because
now,
he has to be.
Will he be a lottery pick? Will he not be a lottery pick? That could be discussed further at another time.
All right. Number 2. Like Derek Queen, Kayleen Schmeichel also dropped a career high this time, 36 points on 13 of 18 shooting. Incredible. The game before she dropped 21 points against Oregon. Thumbs up or thumbs down, the uptick in scoring production for Maryland women's basketball is enough to counterbalance the team's injuries and go on a deep NCAA tournament run. Before we decide this, what do we categorize as a deep NCAA tournament run?
I mean, we know back in one of the earlier shows, I said my bold prediction was that I believe it was they would make a Final Four. I'll say a deep tournament run is Elite Eight.
I agree.
13 of 18? Yeah, no. Well, so do you think yes or no?
So thumbs up or thumbs down? Is Schmeichel's and the team's uptick in scoring recently enough to overcome everything? I think I know my answer.
I think I'm leaning no for this.
I'm gonna go yes.
Okay.
And I think the reasoning is because there's still a lot for them to get prepared, even in the Big Ten in itself, because of how deep it is. I think it's kind of a blessing that Bree McDaniel injury happened early on in the Big Ten slate and not, say, a week from now, which then they'd have to kind of scramble right before the start of the Big Ten tournament. And so I think that will allow them to kind of figure out how it's going to work. We've seen Kayleen Schmeichel have big games, Sarah Poffenbarger have big games, Tebiasu. I think it's just going to be a collective of options, and I think because of that, I think they still have the depth that'll allow them to go on a deep run. And again, I'm not going to count out Brenda Frese.
So that's a thumbs up?
Yes.
That's a thumbs up. I'm going thumbs down. I'm going thumbs down. I think from just a defensive side perspective, yes, they're scoring a lot of points. They're also giving up a lot of points. And if you really watch this team play, they are blowing a lot of big leads late in games. And, of course, it's not always going to be Washington on the other side. They're going to play some really good teams. We even saw what happened last week when they hosted Illinois, a team that has a lot of injuries themselves, even more injuries than Maryland. Illinois was able to get the job done on the road and make some noise. And not only is this a deep conference, a lot of those teams are also going to be in contention for high seeds in the tournament too. Will they be able to overcome that defensive miscue game in and game out? I don't see it, so I'm going thumbs down.
They're mentioning the injuries here as the biggest reason. I think I lean more towards just the performances, and like you said, the Illinois game, also USC, UCLA, like in the biggest, most important games, they have not put together 4 quarters of good basketball or of great basketball that's required for what we're deciding is a deep run. So I'm going to say down as well.
So thumbs up for Brandon, thumbs
Call me an
down
optimist.
for me and Jonas.
I don't like
Brandon.
being the pessimist. I don't like that.
Clearly you do.
I don't want to lie.
All right, question 3. Maryland men's lacrosse is 2-0 to start the season, a win against Richmond and an overtime win over Loyola. They are a team in search of another NCAA championship appearance. Thumbs up or thumbs down? Maryland men's lacrosse will run the table and go undefeated this season. I think we all.
Thumbs down,
I think we
thumbs
all
down,
know that.
thumbs down.
I'm confident in a thumbs down.
All right, let me go. Heavily.
You think this Loyola? You don't think they can turn it around?
To go undefeated in the regular season?
Is that what it says?
Yes, it's undefeated in the regular season.
I just heard run the
They're
table.
undefeated this season.
Thumbs down all the way. Do I think that they could make it back to the national championship? Absolutely.
Sure.
I think John Tillman is one of, if not the best coach in college lacrosse. They still have Braden Erksa, Eric Spanos, McNaney has his up days, his down days, but he's still a former All-American. And I'm really liking what I'm seeing from Matthew Keegan, this transfer. Had a great game, probably the best overall game out of anybody in the opener against Richmond, and then, of course, that game winner. But undefeated, running the table, that's a thumbs down for me. I'm being pessimistic. That's 3 thumbs down.
I think also we talked about the Loyola game earlier in the show. Like if that was, a 5-7 goal blowout or something, maybe, if we see a team with a lot of momentum, but they don't seem to really be closing things out the way that an undefeated team is right now.
I mean, I'm a firm believer in January, February, March, April, Tillman.
Nice.
And so I think, like you said, Nate, especially because of the way last year went, they can make the national championship, but they are not going undefeated. I think I predicted before the season the same regular season basically as last year. I think they slip up 5 times, honestly, so I think undefeated would be quite impressive. I just think their offense, as it has been the past 2 years, just doesn't have a go-to scorer, and so there will be games where they just don't overall shoot the ball well, as they did against Loyola. I think the Big Ten is always deep, and I think especially this year it's deep, And because they've got such a difficult non-conference game, they've got Syracuse, they've got Princeton. They're traveling to Atlanta to face Notre Dame, who lost some pieces, but they're still the defending champs. I just don't see a world in which they go undefeated.
Yeah, the biggest threat to their undefeated season is John Tillman's scheduling because he just loves to play the best teams.
All right, Jonas, back to number 4.
All right. Maryland women's lacrosse is anchored by some veterans like Corey Edmondson and Kennedy Major, but the team has 11 freshmen. Thumbs up or thumbs down? The freshmen will make a bigger impact on this team than the veterans. On Maryland?
This is a tough one. I think this is the toughest one.
So the freshmen will make a bigger
11
impact.
freshmen.
There's a lot of departures.
A lot. I'm going to go thumbs up for this one.
Is this more of because you've only put thumbs down?
That's a good point.
Maybe subconsciously.
These
it's
are
just
hot
time to go
takes,
thumbs up. I'm going to go thumbs up just because they did lose so much. They lose Sterling. They lose Lou Becker. You know, Shea Ahern in the draw. I mean, there's just going to have to be somebody that steps up, right? And when you bring in a talented recruiting class, Kathy Reese is always good at replenishing talent. They haven't had to do that recently with the COVID year, everybody taking that 5th year. Libby May also not in the program as well anymore. I think the freshmen are going to have to learn quick. They're going to have to grow up. We'll see on Saturday when they host Syracuse in the opener what'll happen. But I'm going to go thumbs up. I think a big year coming for Kathy Reese's freshman class.
I'll be quick because you've got probably something interesting to say. I hate to be the pessimist again, but this is a very tough conference for women's lacrosse. And I don't see them, this is a Maryland team that's going to have to deal with a lot of tough teams early on in the schedule. And to me, especially with the shoes that they have to fill at some of those positions too, like you're talking about losing a player like Sterling, it's huge. That is very tough to make up for. So I'm saying thumbs down. I just don't think that's. I mean, a lot of those freshmen are talented, like you said. It's a good incoming class, but that's a big mountain to climb.
Yeah. Mr. Pessimist.
Yeah, very much so.
Traded roles there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to lean thumbs up, and mostly it's just because they've got 11 freshmen. A bunch of them are going to play. They're going to play meaningful minutes. They had a lot of departures, and I just think at the bottom line is, in order for them to be successful, which historically they are year in and year out, the freshmen are going to have to be relied on in prominent roles.
Yeah. All right, here we go. One last one here, number 5. This is a good one. TSC executive producer Alex Gary is as annoying of an Eagles fan as it gets. Congrats to him on winning the Super Bowl.
2 thumbs up for that.
TSC executive producer, me, Nathan Schwartz, is a diehard Commanders fan. Thumbs up or thumbs down. Jaden Daniels and the Commanders would have played a more competitive game against the Eagles in the Super Bowl and could have won. Thumbs up.
Competitive? In this Super Bowl, it would have been a more competitive game.
Is the question that they wouldn't have gotten blown out?
Yeah, thumbs up because the Commanders are a worse team, so the Chiefs would have played them better. Yes. Is that what the question is?
I'll read it again. Jaden Daniels and the Commanders would have played a more competitive game against the Eagles in the Super Bowl than the Chiefs.
So that would be the first Super Bowl between.
That's just what the NFC Championship game was.
The first Super Bowl between two NFC teams. Okay, in this hypothetical world where that happens, I mean, probably. They got blown out. I guess so.
Down. They allowed 50 something points in the NFC Championship.
It was a close game in Philadelphia, or not a close game. It was a closer game than in Philadelphia when it was in.
Here we go.
I'll say yes.
Yeah, but the Eagles had an extra week to prepare for the Chiefs.
I'll say yes.
Jaden Daniels is him. I don't care what the opponent is.
How many MVPs does he have?
Man, Lamar Jackson only has.
We don't need to bring up Lamar Jackson in this sport.
All right,
only 2.
All right, great game. Thumbs up, thumbs down. I feel like we always play good games. Yet another one added to the list.
Producers with some good ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, now we'll go to our Terp of the Week. And this time around, it was a tough choice. Derek Queen set a career high in points. So did Kayleen Schmeichel, like we just talked about. And Siri Tibiasu's been on fire as of late. But because of his impact in such a short span, we're going to go with Eric Spanos from men's lacrosse. Spanos had an early goal at Loyola, but up until the 4th quarter, it was only one of Maryland's 2. The Hard Shells were in dire need of offense, and that's where Spanos stepped in. The senior scored 3 goals in a 4-minute span, which gave the Terps life and provided the spark that led Maryland to its comeback win in overtime. Congrats to Eric for being our Terp of the Week.
All right, let's head on over to the NBA for our Pro Terp this week. Putting in some effective minutes for the Bulls up in Chicago, it's former Terp center Jalen Smith. Last week against the Timberwolves and Warriors, Smith made a major impact coming off the bench. In the two-game stretch, he totaled 29 points, 8 rebounds, and an assist. More importantly, he was efficient, shooting 73% from the field and knocking down 6 total threes. Congrats to Jalen for being named this week's Pro Terp. All right, time for top 5 plays. Let's get us started.
Here we go with number 5. We just talked about him, but it's Eric Spanos. This is his 4th and final goal of the day. Gets the pass from behind X, and you'll see it again here. Works through contact, goes to the ground. It doesn't matter. He gives Maryland the lead.
At number 4, we've got that historical assist from Cheyenne Sellers, and she does it in style. She's such a master of the pass, and you can see it right there.
DQ number 3. I think that's an NBA caliber play, Jonas.
Yes, it
He's
is.
ready for it. The cut inside and the slam over a fellow freshman, Dylan Grant.
Jordan Geronimo says, "I'll do you one better, Derek Queen." Slams the basketball and absolutely destroys that rim, Nathan. I don't know if it recovered from that one.
I don't think Astut's going to recover either. At number 1, Matthew Keegan with the game-winning goal. What a start to his Maryland career. The celebration at midfield for Maryland men's lacrosse as they improved to 2-0 in the young season.
Possibly the start of an undefeated run. Who knows?
Probably not, but
Yeah, we don't
we'll
think
see
so.
what happens.
All right, folks, that's all we've got for you today. The Left Bench is back next week with Drew Owens and Eddie Calkins behind the desk.
Until then, check out all of Terrapin Sports Central's coverage on YouTube, X, Instagram, and online at terrapinsportscentral.com.
We'll see you next time.